tastes. Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. This is the time of year where I get to do a lot of fun things that I just don't have time for in the rest of the year. And that does include sourdough bread. So I have a bread maker over here and I will use this like crazy during the busy season because I can just set it and forget it and still have fresh homemade bread. But guys, there's nothing like sourdough. So I'm waking up my starter that I have dried and had in the freezer all summer long. I also need to do a little bit of cream separating today. I need to do stuff outside in the garden. So we've got kind of a hodgepodge vlog today, but it's kind of what my life is sometimes. So I thought I'd bring you along with me. So as I mentioned, I'm rehydrating a dehydrated sourdough starter. So I have 10 grams of my starter from last year in, I think it was 60 grams of water, and I need to feed this. Originally, I had got my sourdough starter and instructions and a course through Whispering Willow Farm. Jill has put a wonderful course together. If it's still available, I'm gonna link it in the description box below. So the next step for my starter today is to add 40 grams of bread flour. Alrighty. And the consistency that I'm looking for right now is about pancake batter consistency, maybe a little bit thicker than that. What I'm doing right now is just waking up my dormant starter. It's gonna take a few days, a handful of days, maybe up to a week to get it nice and bubbly and active before I can use it. Now it's just gonna sit like this. I've got it covered just on the counter and we'll check on it in about 8 to 12 hours and see if we've got any action going on in here. This is the first time that I'm trying this type of nipple for these baby boys. They need a little bit more milk than I've been giving them. I've given them about 8 ounces at a time and they need a little more. So these glass bottles fit 12 ounces, but they're still kind of new to the whole bottle feeding process, plus this new nipple, so I can't feed them both at the same time quite yet. Hang on, I'll get to you in a minute. But clearly, they're a lot more friendly now. Okay, give me just a minute. Hang on, I guess I can try it. Okay, hold on, let's try it. Let's try it. Hey, you are not a bottle baby. You're not. You never were. Yes. You big boys are so mean. Last night, our low was 27. Greenhouse is fine. Big tomato is doing great. It's time for my morning snack. This has been such a treat. So I have a very special and important project to do today. I need to do 2 things at once, essentially, which is, I kind of like to multitask, so this is right up my alley, even though this isn't necessarily my favorite chore to do. I need to clean out the chicken coop for the winter, but I also need to amend the garden, and thankfully I can do both at once because this chicken manure is gold on the garden. But as you can see here, our chicken coop is basically all roost. So the chickens have been actively pooping underneath of this roost. So there's a lot of fresh manure, and it's not smart to put fresh manure on your garden that you're actively trying to grow in. Chicken manure is a hot manure, and so as it's breaking down, it generates quite a bit of heat and a lot of nitrogen. That's gonna burn your plants. So when I am going to amend the garden with chicken manure, I like to do it at this time of year where the garden is going to be resting and the manure can break down and be ready for the plants to use in spring. We only clean our coop a couple times a year, once in November and then once in March. We use a deep litter method, so as soon as they've pooped kind of a decent layer on the ground, I'll cover it with hay, and then they can poop again, and then I'll cover it with hay. And so we get like a nice little lasagna pack going on in here. You can kind of see the goodness. Yeah, I probably should be wearing something on my face. It doesn't actually smell bad in here, though the dust that is being created probably isn't good for my lungs. But it's a good sign. When you're standing in the middle of any barn or coop, you could smell that it's a barn, okay? You can smell that it's a chicken coop, but you shouldn't be, gagging. You shouldn't really be smelling high levels of ammonia. You really shouldn't be smelling lots of manure. If you are, that's a good indicator that you need to be putting down more brown materials or more straw, more hay, more wood chips, stuff like that, because that smell just tells you that there's too much nitrogen in the area, too much poo breaking down. That brown material, the hay, the straw, the wood chips, they're going to be using that nitrogen up in order to break down the manure, and the smell is greatly decreased. So that was 8 buckets from the coop, and there are going to be many more buckets from the coop coming over in here to the raised bed garden. But honestly, a lot of this garden is either in use right now or has perennial things on it. I don't want to put green chicken manure or fresh chicken manure on any of my perennial plants because of what we discussed before. It's going to burn them. I don't want that. But I've got a lot of rabbit manure in the barn, and when it comes time to amending those perennials, that is what I'm going to use. What you see me doing right now is I'm trying to break up these pepper plants that are dead and gone into smaller bits, placing them down in the bed. By doing this means that the plants are going to break down a lot faster. It just gives them a little bit more surface area, and they're gonna compost down here right in the bed with the manure. But it is easier to do this when they've dried out fully. These plants here are still just a little bit bendy, and it's really not worth breaking your back trying to force plants like this to break down. I'll just wait a little while longer. That hot chicken manure is going to break down the mulch that was on top of this bed over the summer, and this plant material that I'm putting on top of it. Anything that's in contact with that hot manure is going to break down these plants a lot faster, or this woody type material a lot faster. We gotta back up, that wind is blowing, and that's a good thing. We're gonna be composting down this manure and these plants straight in the bed over winter, and they're gonna be ready to plant in springtime. It might take me a few months, honestly, to be completely done with everything that I wanna do in the garden before springtime, but taking it slow and easy like this is really enjoyable for me. I'm able to do that at this time of year, and I like to pace myself. So this is probably all I'm gonna do in the garden today, and I'll do a little bit more in a couple more days. Hey guys, so it's the next day. So after I did my amending in the garden, I actually came inside, did some schooling with the kids, and then before I knew it, it was time to go feed hay before sunset. So I came back inside, and it was just one of those times where you just had to get it done and didn't really have time to get involved and in depth about the how-to process. But I get a lot of questions about my cream separator. So in order to get any kind of cream out of goat's milk that's worth doing anything with, you do need a cream separator. They are a few $100s, but trust me, they are worth the investment. Usually when I have a cream separating day, I wait until I have about 4 gallons of milk. I know that when I put 4 gallons of my goat's milk through the cream separator, I can expect about a half gallon's worth of cream, which gives me around 2 pounds of butter, which is really awesome. So yesterday I had a little bit less than 4 gallons of milk, so today I have a little bit less than a half gallon of cream, but that's gonna be just fine. I'm completely out of butter, and I'm very excited to have more. All the other times that I've made butter, I have done it using our KitchenAid mixer. I have heard a lot of people say that it's a much cleaner process inside a food processor, so I'm gonna be trying that out today. Now, it is my firm belief that to turn cream into butter, it's far easier to do when the cream has been chilled. So I chilled this cream overnight, and I'm just gonna be dumping it in here, turning it on, and seeing how quickly we can get butter. In my mixer, I can do both of the quarts at the same time. I don't think I'm gonna be able to manage that here, so we'll do one at a time. Starting with cold cream. I might be able to get away with it. The max line is up here. Heck, why not? So we'll start low. There, I think that did it. Well, that worked. So this solid stuff that we have here is the butter, and this is the buttermilk. So what comes next is I need to get this butter free of all of the buttermilk. I am actually wondering if we will get about 2 pounds of butter when I'm done washing this, because yeah, that's the next step. I need to get as much of the buttermilk out of the butter as possible, which is gonna help extend the shelf life of the butter and not make it kind of drippy, because it almost sweats when the buttermilk isn't all out of it. Alrighty, so I've added water to our butter here, and I'm just gonna go in with clean hands and knead the butter around. This is gonna free up the buttermilk that's kind of stuck inside the butter, and it's gonna create a nice cloudy liquid that we're gonna pour out and refresh a few times. Actually very curious to see what this butter weighs, because this seems like a lot. I am milking more Nigerian dwarves this time of year. They have a lot more butter fat than some of my bigger girls, and so very curious. Let's see. Not quite 2 pounds, 1.84 pounds of butter, which is about what I expected out of the amount of cream that we got. I do like to add salt to my butter. It works out to about a teaspoon of salt per pound. Obviously start with a smaller amount, because if you start with a larger amount and it's too salty, you can't really take it out. I've got pink Himalayan salt here, which sometimes you can get away with using less, so let's do a teaspoon. A little less than a half, I guess. See how that tastes. You're gonna notice while mixing up the salt that more liquid comes out. So this could be more buttermilk. It could also be leftover water just from rinsing the butter. So I will pour that out into the sink once everything is good and mixed. Yeah, that's a good amount of salt. Perfect. Alrighty, so we've got our lovely butter, and I'm going to mold that in just a second. But I wanted to give you an update on the sourdough starter, like I promised you I would. So this sat for the full 12 hours yesterday and didn't bubble up at all. Didn't worry about it, so I fed it before bed, and it was supposed to essentially double overnight. And it didn't. There were a few bubbles, but I don't know that that wasn't trapped air from me mixing it. It doesn't really smell yogurty or yeasty. No, it doesn't, not yet. And so either it's just going to take more time because maybe my kitchen was a little bit too cold at night, or my starter didn't survive the drying and freezing process like I hoped. So in the very least, I'm just going to keep going forward with the process. And what's very likely going to happen is throughout that process, we're just going to catch some wild yeasts throughout the air and wild yeasts that are in the flour. And we're going to get a nice starter anyways, but that just takes a little bit longer. Not a problem though. I've got some time to wait. It's not even quite winter yet. So we've got the butter and the buttermilk, and I'm sure you noticed when I was cream separating that there was a whole bunch of skim milk, and I did bottle some of it up, and some of it I added a Chev culture to, and that's what you see hanging here. We've got a lot of extra whey that's come out of that, and some of the skim I just kept in the refrigerator. We'll use that for hot chocolate. I used some this morning to make our oatmeal. I do have a video that goes more into depth on cream separating day. During the height of milk season, we do cream separating day about every other week. At this point, it's probably not as often because I'm only bringing in right now about a half gallon a day. If you want to see that more in-depth look about cream separating day and all of the things that we can get out of these same few gallons of milk, I'll go ahead and link that video up here.